4, 3, 2.
I'm Roger Anionson, and we're here with Michael Patterson, and the project we've been working on, and it's been a decade in the making, is finding a way to have better brains that are designed with a plan. And Michael, one of the books that we took a hold of immediately was the Brain's Way of Healing. It came out in 2015. We have to both admit that we're still studying this book, and that we will be for some time. But can you take us through the various steps that he's opened our eyes to the potential of utilizing and actually things like modulating?
Yeah. Deutsch, for those of you who don't know the book or don't know him, is a physician out of Canada, in Toronto. And he's really, I think, more than anybody else in the world, gone around and explored this idea of brain plasticity. He's looked at who are the scientists who have made the greatest advances in this area. And in the more recent book, he's looked at individuals who have used a whole lot of different ways to use the plasticity of the brain to actually heal the brain and heal the body.
And let me take a step back. In 2007, Norman Deutsch stunned the science world with his best-selling book called The Brain That Changes Itself. Now, it was stunning because I don't think that Norman Deutsch was intending to have a bestseller, but he was taken, and he had a passion to find out who proved once and for all that our brains can actually rewire in a certain way, both positively and negatively. In 2007, we expected there'd be a follow-up in the next few years. Nothing was published. He wasn't doing something that we were aware of until just before the book came out. And what he had done is to go where his passion led him, and that is neuroplasticity is now a fact that's accepted, but how is it going to be used today? Here's the cutting edge. He even gives us a peek over what might be.
Yeah, he's really looking forward. I mean, the science, it's all based on science. Some of his critics say it's too anecdotal, but as you say, he's really taking cutting edge and saying, look at where this could be going, where we really think it is going. Where we wanted to get to in this little segment was talking about it in the process of going through and looking at all of these different fascinating examples of how people are using plasticity. He was doing this wonderful thing of drawing out what are the lessons that we can learn from this, what are the generalizations that we can extract. And he came up with 5 specific activities that he thinks are going on and why plasticity leads to healing. The first was cellular protection and repair, and sort of keeping the cells being just in good shape. The second one he called neurostimulation. It's like some of the things that were going on, whether you're using your mind or other forms of energy like light or energy, heat or sound. In some instances, you're stimulating brain cells that were underperforming. So you're getting them back up to on the reverse side, you're neuromodulating, neuro-relaxing, sort of. There are cells that are going crazy, and you need to calm them down. So that's another process. And then finally, what he talks about is neurodifferentiation.
Which I thought was fascinating, and goes into the mindfulness field to have such minute differences that you control, that it gives anyone at any age the ability to understand how they could benefit by controlling even the slightest thought or movement or listening to a sound a little bit more keenly.
Right. Yeah, neurodifferentiation, what he's talking about is any sort of function that we have, say we're playing the piano, that's connected to the motor cortex, the part of the brain that's being, and there would be millions of individual nerve cells that are supporting this. The more you specifically practice each individual finger, there's greater differentiation of the nerve cells that are actually doing it. The greater the differentiation, the more nimble you are actually. There have been experiments where they've taped people's hands together, fingers together, and what happens in the brain is that you lose the differentiation. So,
between one finger and the next.
yeah,
And the pattern of this finger, and this finger are all traceable up here.
right.
So as you said, if you can prove that by taping them together, the brain then merges, it allows us to have the ability to have differentiation by knowing that any little movement is going to have some smidgen of an effect on your brain.
Yeah, and as you said earlier, the same is true for not only for movement, but for thinking, for all different domains. So it really is saying, figuring out what's going on in the brain when you are mastering something. We talked about mastery in this. When you're getting better at an activity, part of the process is differentiation. Another part that he doesn't talk about so much, but I think is implied, is the connectivity in the brain. That's another way that we get better when we've got a brain that's working properly, that is calmed down and is stabilized. How do we make it better? Part of it is through this neurodifferentiation, but also it's through building up greater connectivity, but across
I like
the
to call
brain.
that the architecture. You're actually physically changing the structure. Now that those can be measured, when Deutsch is having that mastery as a goal, for instance, and it's a time sensitive, and you have to put in the time.
Right.
But in the dark ages of neuroscience in the 80s and 90s, you wouldn't be able to convince someone that a little bit of a practice or a lot of practice makes that much difference because I can't see it. Well, now that we can convince someone fairly quickly with the science to support us that when you do practice, you can then build a structure that will protect you. And that's back into the reserve theory out of Columbia.
Right.
But Deutsch is taking it to a step of the neurostimulation, modulation. He's really seeing that the future is for us to understand as individuals that we can have control over how to jumpstart our brains and then how to sustain them.
Yeah. So it's helped us a lot in marking out this whole idea of better brains by design, because we're saying, okay, we need to make sure that there are strategies that we know do. We've sort of taken the neurostimulation and the neuro relaxation and clumped it together to
Generally, yes.
Yeah, it's neuromodulation. It's like you have to balance out the
dials.
systems. Yeah.
They aren't switches that is high, medium, and low. Everybody has a panel of dials, and Deutsch points out that the future is to find which one works for you, whether it's sound or light or something that is yet to be discovered that's going to be just right for you. That's why the design portion and the tailoring is really what we think is giving control to individuals with the help of neuroscientists who are going to help us figure out which dials are out there.
Right. So it's very exciting stuff.
It really is.